Hi, in this episode I explore why I rarely start with attachment wound targets. And to do this, I want to identify first what is required of clients to do EMDR therapy. Then I want to explore what is so complicated about attachment wound targets, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of the misconnect. So what is required to do EMDR therapy? Period. Not even what's required to do it well, what's required to do it at all. In order to do it, we need to slow down, be present, and notice. These are not easy tasks for people who are pervasively traumatized. In fact, most people with this type of wounding have survival strategies that move opposite these tasks. What they've needed to survive has forced them to move in opposite ways than these tasks that we're asking them to do in EMDR therapy. So preparing somebody to slow down, be present, and notice can be a challenging task. But that's only half of the EMDR calculation. The other half of the calculation is they need to be able to activate but not overactivate. They need to have a window of tolerance compatible with the activation that they're doing. They need to have enough adaptive information for the difficult stuff to connect to. It's what we're doing in EMDR therapy. We're connecting beneath awareness, beneath the hood. We're connecting information to other information. And you cannot connect a lie to a lie. And you can't land a whale of a memory into adaptive information the size of a canoe. So what are attachment wounds and why are they different? Attachment wounds are about everything. They have 10,000 tentacles. They're about pervasively unmet need. Do you hear the words pervasively unmet need? They're about lovability, connection, safety, family, belonging, value, importance, and identity. They're about everything, and they're behind a lot of our triggering right now when things get triggered decades later. Attachment wounds fuel our addictions, our obsessions. They're the logic behind a lot of our forms of disconnection, and they're why love is so hard right now. For all of these reasons, they're not easy targets, and especially not initial ones, but they are essential ones to get to. Clients with this type of wounding probably will not get pervasively better until someone can come and help the kid parts out of that existentially lonely childhood state. And to do that, we have to get the client's other parts healthy enough to get it out of that existentially lonely childhood state. So other than being big, other than being nested targets, what else is difficult about this type of wound? And I want to identify 4 ways that attachment wounds are particularly complicated in ways that directly impact EMDR processing based on the requirements of EMDR that we just identified. So, number 1, people who are born to people who do not know how to meet their needs, that is wounding. And it's one of the worst wounds we have. It's almost always the big Barnum and Bailey center ring of the trauma circus. And if that's how you're starting this life, everything after that is probably sideshow, right? That is the core central wound. The event stuff, as horrible as they are, very often sideshow. The somatic state of that wound, the way that wound when it gets activated feels, is very easy to mistake for sadness, and it's easy to mistake for anxiety because it has plenty of both in it. But for many people with attachment wounding, huge existential loneliness is the core intolerable emotion. And what do we do in EMDR therapy? We activate, but we don't overactivate. We connect to it. And when we connect to it, Existential loneliness doesn't want to come in small, measured, noticeable, and digestible chunks. It feels like childhood felt, and it's very, very big. So if that's what clients are trying, right, this is what clients are trying to stay ahead of, right, when they're surviving by not slowing down. That wound is the size of weather. They'll put a needle in their arm not to feel it for an hour. Again, events can be horrible, but they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Attachment wounds are about everything. Number 2, when we're born to people who don't know how to meet our needs, they don't go, oops, sorry, my goodness, you certainly deserve to be loved by somebody who could meet your needs. No, that's not what they do. They often shame, blame, humiliate us for having those needs. And this causes serious confusion about those needs. But in those needs are some of the foundational adaptive information about what it means to be born human, which is why people with attachment wounding will often burn themselves up looking for or trying to make themselves into the very things they were already born being. Abuse and neglect in early childhood are awful, but the reasons given for the abuse and neglect find their way deep into the rust-red marrow of identity. And every one of them is a lie. You cannot connect a lie to a lie in EMDR therapy. And paired with unmet need, it is almost always a lie that accounts for it. Number 3, because this wounding is so pervasive, and the somatic experience, right, the somatic experience of it and the re-experience of it is so horrible, we typically need powerful coping strategies to manage those states and those wounds. So dealing with this type of unmet need is how many of us learned learn that early alchemy of self-erasure. And while that disconnective impulse can truly be the thing that saves us, often it's the thing that makes it harder for us to get the exposure to the corrective information that we ultimately need to heal. Trauma of this type necessitates survival strategies, and survival strategies often have cost. They have developmental cost. They have informational cost. The cost of those strategies forms some of the challenges in EMDR therapy related to addictions, obsessions, compulsions, dissociation, somatic disconnection, well-protected, well-guarded systems, masking, overachieving, and perfectionism, all of which can be complications and some of which can be blocks in this work entirely. 4, when we're born to people who don't know how to meet our needs, we didn't have the experience of getting our needs met. So many things about who we are, what we're worth, and how we deserve to be treated, we have to learn through actual experiential learning. These things are easiest to believe about ourselves, and they're modeled in our earliest experiences. These things we experientially missed when we were very young comprise much of the deficit of the very adaptive information that's most needed for us to be able to heal in EMDR therapy. You simply won't have a boat big enough for the wound that you're trying to connect. So the purpose of this episode has been to take a 30,000 foot view of what's complicated about starting with attachment wounds and to provide some context about them in EMDR therapy. Other podcasts, other resources, other sections of this series are going to highlight some options in preparing to work on attachment wounds. And almost everything I do is experiential. Relational wounds typically require corrective relational experiences to heal. The therapeutic relationship is part of that. Relational experiences in the attachment figure resources are great places to start. Relational experiences between the client parts are perhaps even better places to start. Resolving small targets can help build some of the adaptive information needed for the bigger attachment ones. The book, EMDR with Complex Trauma, walks you through some of the categories of targets I like to start with people with really complex trauma. And it's designed to give you some clues about when the client does have enough adaptive information to land these memories. This and other resources give you options about how to help clients develop the needed adaptive information. So, in summary, not all memories are the same. You can't connect a lie to a lie. And these memories related to mom, related to dad, related to very early childhood need, tend to be the whales of memory. And there's a logic for not starting in the territories of the most identity confusion. It's sensible not to start with territories that hold the most intolerable body states. The goal in working with healthy people is to work efficiently and effectively. The goal in working with complex trauma clients is to find a way to start somewhere. The risk is that we get so overwhelmed by the complexity that we don't start at all. And by all means, we have to get there. Something. Ideally, the client's most resourced parts need to go to that little kid, wrap their arms around him and tell him that he was born good enough, that he always deserved to get his needs met, that he was born lovable, that none of this was his fault. Somebody needs to say it. Somebody needs to construct that experience. But it is often a very bad idea to go straight there right out of the gate.